the crazy thing about this journey that we've been on with Francis, really since the Cyril Gane fight when he fought out his contract with the injured knee and he wins and he bets on himself and then he sits out for a year, right? And then we start to hear that they're trying to make the fight with John Jones and he walks away from all of that. And then he gets unceremoniously just sort of like in a post-fight press conference, I think for an Apex event, Dana White says like we're out of the Francis business. He tries to couch it as them releasing him, but they didn't release him. He was a free agent at that point. They just said like we're not going to entertain any sort of business offers after they tried several times to re-sign him. The crazy thing about this is from that moment on, everyone said, and I hate this term, and I hate even repeating this term, but it's the term that has been parroted ad nauseum over the last few months. He fumbled the bag. And then it was January to February to March to April. And then we get to May and we get the PFL announcement. Everyone's like, you left the UFC for this? And I think us smarter people were like, all right, January to May, let's just wait to see how this plays out. How can you say that the guy fumbled the bag before we know the end of the story? And then we get to the PFL announcement and people still said, you left for this, you fumbled the bag. Right. And I think most people in the media said, can we just see the way this thing plays out? Because it's not done. Because he always told us that there was the boxing component that he cared about more. And he always told us that he was going to fight in boxing in 2023 before the MMA deal. But people wrote him off even after the history-making PFL deal. And now he gets this. And it's not, and let me tell you, there were talks with lesser fighters. And I disagree. Like, this is the biggest of them all. This is way bigger than Deontay Wilder or anyone else. But it's not Chisora. It's not White. Mm-hmm. It's not Andy Ruiz. It's not Wilder. It's not some, bum. It's not Hasim Rahman Jr. It's not someone like that. I'm not saying Rahman is the bum. I'm just saying it's no one of that ilk. It's freaking Tyson Fury. It's Tyson freaking Fury in a fight that is under boxing rules in a boxing ring. No gimmicks, no gloves, no like little. How could you say this didn't work out? It's a masterstroke. It's unbelievable that this guy from Cameroon was able to pull this off and go out on his own and get it done. And it's going to be on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. It's not going to be on some like Fakakta pay-per-view banner that, like Terrence Crawford fought on in December that no one watched. Yeah. It's under the platform that the UFC built. I mean, this is something, Chuck. This is incredible.
He's swinging for the fences, right? And he did it very publicly. He made himself very vulnerable by putting himself in this position. He made himself open to the kinds of doubt and attacks that we're talking about, the fumbling the bag. But not only does he basically make a public statement about the principles in play that he holds, towards the fight game in general, right? Like, but he holds out and he gets the fight he wants. I honestly don't know. Like in some ways, if you're rooting for fighters, like fighters in general, just fighters to do what's best for them. Like we hear this all the time. There's always there's a certain kind of fan that just wants the fights they want, but there's another kind of fan that has burgeoned over the last several years that basically wants to see the fighters put in the best positions they can and to have the leverages and to capitalize on these moments. And here he is doing it. And I think that it's semi unprecedented. I know that we do have, you can point to the Nate Diaz thing, which is probably the closest, but even the Conor McGregor Mayweather thing that put Conor's basically his UFC run on hold. It was a side attraction that he took on and actually derailed, if anything else, his UFC career. That's why there was a lot of dissent in the aftermath. Was like, well, he went and did this thing, he got his bag, right? And now he doesn't care about fighting in MMA anymore. This one, we had already resolved that Francis was leaving the UFC. Right. So we already resolved that he's doing it. Now it's just, can he get the big payday that he set out to get? And he did it. He swung for the fences and he got it very publicly. And it's a delicious moment in combat sports. I may not pan out to be the best thing. Who knows? By the end of it, we might be like, that was an ill-fated thing that he did. But in prospect, and this is how it all runs, right? In a hype game, he won. And I think that's pretty damn cool, man. I mean, just to see it play out, he made himself vulnerable, bet on himself. So we keep seeing guys win in these situations, and I can never get enough of that.
We wanted to see a guy make a life-changing amount of money. We wanted to see a guy leave and, hold his own destiny up, hold it in his hands, and this is what he's doing. So even if it doesn't go well, right? Say if the worst thing imaginable happens and Tyson Fury knocks this guy out in the first round in Rhea, he still won. Like that's the reality of the situation, because he was challenging the UFC on the value that they were putting on him. And he challenged them and he challenged them. And then Dana saying, we offered him this much, we offered him this much. But it comes down to not really how much. It comes down to him wanting to do what he wanted to do. And I saw a lot of people talking about, we need to add some jeopardy. Like, we we need to put them in a cage and let them box in a cage or put them in silly gloves. That's not what he wanted to do. From the very first moment he stepped into Fernand Lopez's gym in France, he thought he was going to be training to be a boxer. And now he is a boxer in the biggest fight in the world. That's pretty incredible. That is absolutely incredible.
And he used his MMA career basically to put him in that position, which
just a launch pad.
It's a perception, man. Like it's the perception, right? Baddest man on the planet. Like you put yourself into that position and he was able to do that. I said before, he was kind of a quintessential heavyweight in the Tyson, in that ilk where you can look at him and be like, that guy looks like a heavyweight champion. I think the aesthetics really help in this situation. Like he just looks like a Hulk. If he does land, we've seen him with the one punch power. It sets up really nicely, man. And really, that's all you want. You want it to be compelling for anybody who doesn't even pay attention to combat sports to take a look and say like, oh my God, this guy's this and this guy's this, and they're going to fight. That's what you want, right? And that's what they're going to get.
But he's knocked it out of the park. Like, as Ariel said, this is Tyson Fury. I would have been like clapping if he had been a match with Dillian White.
Yeah,
I would have been clapping if he fought Derek Chisora. I was saying I quite liked that fight. I was saying
that's because you thought it was realistic. You thought that was probably realistic. This was swinging for the fences, man. I mean, that's what makes it great.
He's knocked it out of stratosphere. Like, it's a completely different game now.
And the frustrating thing, and we shouldn't be frustrated by it, but this is what I am seeing today is, he's going to get smoked. And it's like completely missing the point. Yeah. It's complete. It's they continue. For whatever reason, there are people who are rooting for this guy's failure. They continue to move the goalposts. First, the mistake was he left the UFC. And then the beauty of that was he was patient. He didn't rush. In this day and age where it feels like we have to rush for everything because it's all like social media right away, instant gratification, he was patient. He went from January to May before announcing his first move, right? And then he goes to the PFL and it's like, he messed up. And now he messed up by taking this fight. Like what he is going to make, I mean, compared to what he last made in the UFC, which was around $600,000 for the Ciryl Gane fight, this is a multi-million-dollar fight. And it's again, and could you imagine? It's the beauty of the fight game. If he's able to pull this off now, meaning the win, the win, what happens then, right? Because now he's in talks with all these other guys, and you could say long shot, you can say it's a fairy tale, all you want. He's in the freaking ring with the guy. Anything can happen at that point. He got it done. Tyson Fury was being pulled in the direction of Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua, and in the end, he somehow pulled this off. And so I can't wait to hear more details on, is there going to be a rematch clause? I've asked about the rounds. I've asked about all these things. Now let's talk about the one thing that is still somewhat hanging over all of this. The first person to bring up that this was close to a done deal was Eddie Hearn, which is, you could say not really his news to break necessarily. It's not on a platform that he does.
Gotta love it. Come on.
And it's his competitor, Frank and George Warren, Queensberry, who are putting this together along with, Francis's promotion and Saudi Arabia. But nevertheless, and he used the word exhibition, and that's the word that everyone keeps like hanging on to.
Yeah, I got tripped up by that word.
Yeah, and so I've asked for clarification on that. And what I was told by a source very close to the event is they can knock each other out. They can win by knockout. There's going to be judges. They will judge the fight. Here's where I think the exhibition thing comes into play. It's unclear. It could happen, but right now it's unclear because they haven't commented on it, whether or not a sanctioning body like WEBC is going to sanction this. And if they don't sanction it, perhaps because of Francis's lack of experience and Tyson's tremendous amount of experience in boxing, then it doesn't count as a pro bout on Tyson and Francis's record. That's the only difference, right? If everything is the same, and it's no different, by the way, than the UFC going to London and there's no commission, but they're judging it and employing the judges. It's really no different than that. Obviously, boxing and MMA and UFC are constructed a little differently. It's really the only difference. That's the word everyone is getting hung up on. So they think it's like some exhibition where they can knock each other out. It's not that. I would say there's a precedent. Maymack was a pro bout, and Conor had less experience than Francis, and Floyd had more experience than Tyson Fury. That was sanctioned. Nevada oversaw it. The sanctioning bodies were involved, all that stuff. Why is this any different? I wonder if it's because Nevada and the UFC was involved and blah, 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 blah. Who the hell knows? But I would not get hung up on exhibition. Based on everyone and every conversation that I've had, this morning and leading up to all this is there is going to be a winner, and that win could come via knockout. And ultimately, who gives a fuck if it's under the WBC banner or not? It's a real fight, and you hope that we'll get a real winner.
Well, I mean, Eddie Hearn has to do everything he can to throw water on this situation, right? His guy was meant to be fighting Tyson Fury, and now he's taking this fight, and he's going to make a truckload of money. Like, of course, every opposing like, what's Dana going to say? Dana's going to be swinging out of that word as well. Of course he is. But you know what? I think one of these bodies is going to want to get involved in this. Like, I think one of them will want to put their names to it, because it's going to be a huge spectacle. Like, people are going to be watching this fight, even if they know, if they're fully convinced that there's no hope in hell Francis Ngannou can win this fight. I think they're still going to want to watch it, because it is an intriguing plot.
I think that it was interesting, the words that were used to construct the press release. I saw the PDF that just came through, and obviously they basically tell you everything that they can without clarifying that, right? And I think that is a point of contention, but I'm with you on that. As long as the knockout is in play, and it also kind of doubles, because I think there was a lot of people that like, oh, Floyd, he carried Connor for 5-6 rounds in that fight before he's like, all right, it's enough of this, let's let's take him out. It kind of doubles in a way of removing not exhibition from it, but like, not, just crossover novelty stuff. Like, it kind of just says, this is legit, this will be real, they're going to go in there to swing for the fences. Everything within that language is good enough for me, because I think that that's good enough for Francis. That's what he wants to prove, right? If you can go in there and get a fair fight, and they're going to swing for each other, and if it doesn't in the first one, that's totally great, right? Because it kind of proves that that it was up and up the whole way. Like, this is the way it's arranged. So I feel like it's set up just right. And just an aside, we were talking about Dana. Like, it's pretty interesting, because he's had a lot of counter moves, because I think there's a very live vendetta against Francis Ngannou for the public way things were held, the way that things went down. It's kind of egg on his face. I mean, it's pretty obvious egg on his face, but like, just from the standpoint of one of the kind of distractions he threw out there, one of those smoke bombs, was that Fury might come to the UFC and fight John Jones. You know what I mean? And it's like, he still thought, or something was trying to plant, that there was an inside track there. It's pretty interesting to see that it ends up this way. And I guess part of this game is now, what does Dana White end up saying? And another time was, I think it was you, right? Ariel, you put something out about this fight was going to get done last week or whatever, and immediately they announced Miocic and Jones, and there's always a counter coming. So it'll be interesting to see what the counter is from the UFC on this.
I can't wait to see how he poo-poos this, because to your point, he was openly trying to persuade Tyson Fury, who's one half of this fight, to come and fight his guy in an MMA fight, which he has said in the past, boxers coming over to the UFC is nonsense. And yet he was trying to make it happen, only to take this opportunity away from Francis. That was the only reason why. And so now he's like openly campaigning for Elon Musk versus Mark Zuckerberg, and Francis, who calls his promotional company Gimmick Fight Promotions, because that's what Dana, wink wink nudge nudge, called him versus Joshua. It's hard. There's so much richness to this.